If I were to do this project over again, I probably would have done a little bit more of the process work. Um, I would have done, I would have figured out, from the user experience, I could have figured out my whole podcast format at the very beginning. I could have already had, more than a couple episodes out already. I would have, I might have even a bigger audience base. So when I initially started, I wanted this podcast to be, a historical one. I wanted to kind of emulate the podcasts that I always enjoy listening to. Ridiculous History, Stuff to Blow Your Mind, the Cracked podcast, Stuff You Should Know. These are all great podcasts, and I loved each and every one of them. But I could never, settle on which part of the podcast I like the most. So I decided to just incorporate everything. So I wish that I had, done a survey like really early on, like way before my first episode. This way I could have figured out, what's the best format, what's the best, how I should break it up. Should it be in chunks? Should it be just one large, podcast all at once with nothing in between, no breaks, or let the user do it themselves. And probably the reason I wish I'd done this is it would have just made it a lot easier for me to get more work done, and have it be, I think, probably better quality. Probably on a sub note, one of the things I'd really like to fix if I were to do it over again, I wanted flawless internet, no skips or lags. But every time I've recorded a podcast for using my internet, I always get skips and jumps, no matter what. So I hope to be on a much better internet, because I plan to continue, creating more podcast episodes, and I've actually just recently pivoted. We're no longer really a history-facing podcast anymore. We're more of more like a leisure-based thing. I'll go on the dashboard. So here's what it says. So our show used to be a more of a history thing, and now it's still What Do You Mean? That's still the show title, but now here's what it says. Have you ever been somewhere and overheard a conversation in a public place, but much to your dismay, the conversation moved out of earshot? Or maybe you've seen something just absolutely crazy. This podcast aims to carry on those conversations and help us have a good laugh. And the reason I'm doing this is because, for the purposes of the assignment, I wanted to keep things relatively simple. I wanted it to be not take up too much of my time. So but having to do all of that research, and having to drum out a little bit of a story, and that's a lot of work. As seen in the first episode, it was only 8 or 9 minutes long, and the second episode, although much longer, it was still too long, and it didn't really feel like it was what I wanted to do. So, let me see, where's the other one? Okay, so, question number 2. Do you have future plans to create another digital composition? So, yes, I mean, with this podcast, I plan to keep continuing with this podcast and developing it more. So from this experience, I would probably just say, just make sure everything is perfect. Make sure the audio is perfect. Listen to it, the whole thing, and if you hear anything irregular, go back and edit it. Remove the skips and jumps if you can. Probably have all your social media, everything set up way in advance. Because if I had some of these things, like the email for the podcast and the Instagram for the podcast all set up way ahead of time, I think I would have done a much better job on implementing each one of those things, because I haven't really spent that much time on each one of them. It's a lot of work doing it all by yourself, and then still having to do all these other assignments. do you plan to keep your site or project up and running after the semester ends? I think I already answered this question, but yeah, I'm planning to keep the project up and running. I plan to help, ask my friends if they want to join in on the podcast from time to time. Of course, I am going to have to rely on them if they want to, if this podcast is kind of going to work, because it's mostly about conversations we've heard or just stuff, like really weird stuff that we've seen, or even just things that interested us, and us just talking about it and just having a good old time. So my biggest takeaway from our class this semester is do your due diligence, really. Take your time and work out every angle, and really just try to just collect data, lots and lots of data. The more data, the better. Like, the data can only help you. It's but you have to you have to do surveys. You have to do ask people. Like, what do you like about this? Do you like compare and contrast two different of the same product? It could be one podcast episode might have completely the same theme and same subject, but it can be completely done in two separate ways. So compare them and ask people, make like a little sample. Ask them if they like it, and it'll help you in so many ways. I really wish that I'd done a lot of this stuff really early on. And if anything, something that I think probably I'll always remember is how our teacher, completely revamped our semester. Or at least for me, doing this project it's like giving a kid candy. For me, it's like I with this, I was able to actually do something that I felt interested in, and actually work as hard as I possibly could on it. I wish I worked even harder than I did. I probably would have gotten a lot more done, but I learned. I think I'll always remember that the best work comes from patience. You're not going to get everything out all at once. Even some novels take years to write. Some paintings take years. Some take days. It really art doesn't have a time limit. So I think that's probably something I'll remember. Art doesn't have a time limit. Thank you. Bye-bye.